Last month marked the 6th anniversary of the war in Afghanistan. On October 7, 2001, aerial strikes by American and British forces attacked the cities of Jalalabad, Kandahar, and the Afghan capital of Kabul. A month later, on November 25th, saw the first major deployment of U.S. troops in Afghanistan, and we have occupied the country ever since. This piece is called A Letter to Curtis. It was written to a combat medic in Afghanistan in March of 2007. I hope you enjoy. Curtis. Greetings from Austin, Texas. My name is Mike. I live with your Aunt Jen in a housing co-op called Sasona. She asked if everyone in the house could donate some toiletries to her nephew in Afghanistan and maybe some time to write a letter. Seeing as my only employment right now is writing, there really was no excuse for me to not sit and write a letter. Your aunt told me a lot about you, about your life, your service, and so on. First off, congratulations on receiving the Purple Heart. Maybe congratulations isn't the proper word, but as a civilian, I don't feel I'm in any position to rightly commend you. Either way, it's a truly admirable distinction. The story your aunt told me was that you held up a tabletop to prevent some soldiers from getting hit with bomb shrapnel, and 2 fingers were exposed. That's some remarkably fast thinking right there, straight out of an action movie. I wonder if I'd have enough sense to react the same way. She said that as a result of the blast, you have no feeling in the exposed fingers. Is that true? I thought about that for a long time after she told me. Even still, I can't imagine that feeling. To have a part of your body you can see and touch and operate, yet it sends you no feedback. They must have seemed alien to you at first. It can't make your job as a medic any easier. Like if you're reaching in a supply kit, can you distinguish different objects by touch anymore? If you're treating someone while doing something else at the same time, do you have to look at your hands periodically to make sure they're doing what you want? Maybe it's not as bad as I imagine it. There are certainly worse injuries to have. Still, I can't picture what it's like to have 5 working fingers and 3 feeling fingers. Jen said you're 23. I'm 23 too. It also came up in the conversation that both your parents are divorced and remarried. So are mine. It even turns out that our fathers did pretty much the same thing. Your dad moved from north from Texas to Maryland, while my dad moved south from New York to North Carolina. I was thinking about this a couple of days later, and out of curiosity, I asked when your dad had moved. Jen said he moved when she was 12, or 17 years ago. We were the same age when our fathers moved away. I've always found it really easy to imagine myself in other people's shoes. For instance, there's this girl that Jen and I live with in the co-op named Steph. Steph was born February 7th, 1984, and I was born February 6th, 1984. I know that doesn't sound all that impressive, but for some reason I find it intriguing. That we were put here on this earth less than 24 hours apart. She in Guatemala, me in Brooklyn, and our paths wound and turned until they ended up here, in Austin, Texas, at the co-op, 50 feet down the hall from each other. Nearly the same amount of time on this earth, and, for a little while at least, our vastly different paths have led us to the same destination. It's not the same for sure, but I get this similar feeling with you, Curtis. Here we are, 23, male, products of a 4-parent upbringing, our fathers far away by the age of 6, hitting the prime of our adulthood with our country caught up in conflicts that will come to define how the United States chooses to use its superpower status. And where have our paths led us? I'm out on a patio in Austin eating a giant chocolate chip cookie, while you're in the unreachable wilds of Afghanistan treating soldiers in the midst of combat, with 2 unfeeling fingers. I can't say you don't make me feel like a child. It's doubly embarrassing that I was eating the cookie at the time of this realization. But I don't think it's your involvement in combat that makes me feel childish in comparison. It's your involvement in a war, if that makes any sense. Combat happens everywhere. Playgrounds and pool halls, side streets and swap meets. War is different. War means ideology. You're not stumbling into a random knife fight. You're going to battle with a cause you're willing to die for. I'd really love to know your motivations for fighting one day if you get the chance to write back. From what your aunt tells me about you, your intentions seem to be nothing but the purest. For starters, defense of country, both its citizens and values. She also told me how your service will help fund your education. That's also a really well-intentioned pursuit, though the idea that there are probably men and women over there fighting solely for access to education is an unsettling thought. What I appreciated the most about your intentions as relayed to me by your aunt was your desire to help. She stressed it a couple times that you really thought you could make a difference in the lives of the people of Afghanistan. I find that to be the most admirable of your motivations. It's one thing to force your will on a country in the interest of national defense. It's quite another to commit the immense effort necessary to help that same war-torn country find its way. Much can be said about economic plans and infrastructure building, but the effort starts with you, the soldier, ambassador of America's values. I hope, with your efforts and the efforts of soldiers like you, a middle ground can be found between our values and the values of the Afghan people, the end result being a strong, independent Afghanistan. Jen was telling me you're a religious person. She said you belong to a Protestant church, though she wasn't sure what denomination exactly. I myself grew up a papist. 12 years Catholic school, a confirmation name, Xavier, church every Sunday, and so on. I still identify as a Catholic in some respects, but in practice I'm somewhat lacking. It's hard to be religious these days, and I'm not just talking about all the temptations around us. I'm thinking more about the flack one can take for believing in God at all. Maybe it's just the people I'm friends with or the websites I visit online, especially online. But there seems to be a weird type of prejudice developing against those that believe in God these days. In our society, it's all about logic. How everything observable in this world has a tangible, physical explanation that can be traced all the way back to creation if necessary. If we don't have an answer for something, the common response is no longer, it's God's work, but rather, we haven't found the answer yet. It's science versus religion, and science seems to have the more ordered, more rational argument for the story of the universe. Because of this, religious people are looked on as ignorant and even mocked in our society by those that claim science contains the true answers to life's important questions. These are the same people that generally consider themselves progressive when it comes to issues of race and gender. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not claiming things like evolution are made up. But ultimately, I know two things. First, for all the complex rational arguments constructed through science, there's still the issue of the uncaused cause. What caused that first spark that started the universe? Ultimately, there's a leap of faith involved even for the science-minded. So if there's a leap of faith in either case, why be so close-minded? Why so violently reject the idea that perhaps not everything has a physical cause? It seems like most of these people are throwing the baby out with the bathwater. The bathwater being the terrible things that are done in the name of God, and the baby being human spirituality. Two, I just know there's more. I know that's an illogical answer, but the God question is at its heart illogical, so why not? For example, take writing, my chosen life path. When I write something really good, not just well-constructed or really witty, but truly inspired, something clicks and I know it's good. It doesn't happen often. There's a remarkable surge of pleasure at knowing it's right. And never in the middle of that indescribable certainty and euphoria do I think to myself, man, my endorphins are racing. That's an insult to the moment. It's moments like that let you know there's something larger. I'm not even making the claim that God is beyond those types of feelings, is behind those types of feelings, as you might. I'm just saying there's more to that feeling and more to humans than biological function alone.